Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul Security Weekly. They are celebrating the milestone of reaching over 1,000 members of the CISO community. The Cybersecurity Collaboration Forum is a one-stop shop for executive collaboration comprised of CISOs across various industries. If you want to be a part of this growing community of CISOs, join them as a member or technology partner. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/cybersecurity collaboration. Make sure you subscribe to the Below the Surface podcast by Eclipsium in partnership with CRA. Myself and Scott Shefferman host the show, and we've had the pleasure of speaking to some amazing guests. Recently, we've actually interviewed some internal folks. Vlad is our most recent interview. That dropped today. He's an amazing security researcher from Ukraine and recently moved here to the States. Talks about his journey and some amazing research he did into BMCs. Previous to that, John Lucades, formerly of No Such Agency, worked for Intel and is one of the early members of the Eclipsium team and someone who I consider my dear friend. And I constantly run things by him, and his insights are always valuable, and he does a full interview with us. So to check out all of those episodes, visit eclipsium.com/podcast. I would like to start with a story an article that I wrote that has consumed the past 3 to 4 weeks of my life, right? And you kind of, you're on something big when you've been working tirelessly for about a month on one particular single project. And I am not the first person, I should say, I am not the first person to look at this particular area of technology and or insecurity, as it were. There are many before me. And this all, well, let's see. So this started when I wrote a blog post for Eclipsium on building your security lab. And then I started seeing stories that Android TV devices were getting to consumers already infected with malware. And I didn't see the story just once. Like, I kept seeing the story over and over again. And the spark that ignited the flame for me, and this is an indication that you work for an amazing company, and I happen to be very blessed and work for an amazing company. One of my coworkers was like, Paul, you should look at that because you seem really excited about it. You should look at that, and you should take the firmware, and you should do analysis on it. And like that was enough of a spark for me to embark on, with permission from the powers to be of the Eclipsium. They're like, yeah, have at it. I'm like, really? And now I have Eclipsium's research team. And I also happen to have a very good friend, Larry Pesce, that also works in this space. And probably all of you on the show, I've probably run this by or at least talked about what I've been working on as well, which is amazing to be part of this community. And so I dug into Android TV devices. So just like a brief overview, and I'd love to hear questions from our host on this. As kind of a brief overview, I basically ended up buying 4 of these devices, disassembling them in various ways. One of them, Larry helped me pull the chip off of it, read the chip in an eMMC reader. One of our other researchers at Eclipsium did the same thing. I should note that if you're going to do this validation on any device, it doesn't matter if it's Android TV or whatever it is, right? There's the physical components, right? Like getting a serial or a JTAG or some kind of header on the board is one way. Pulling the actual storage chip, whether it's eMMC or a SPI flash, off of the board and putting that in a reader to get access to the raw data that's stored on the flash chip is another way. In Android world, what a lot of the references that you'll see in my article, and I strongly recommend that you read all the references and resources that I put in the article, because I read them all and I learned a ton. But in Android, you have the Android debugger. I've used the Android debugger, in the past for various kinds of things. The Android debugger, you can interface with a device via the Android debugger over the network, port 55, 5.5 is the default port TCP, or you can do USB debugging as well. And so using all those different mechanisms, and again, my goal wasn't to create like the world's most unique research. I was basically validating previous research that had come before me. And the post is more about the how than the what, I found. In fact, some questions I've fielded from other hosts have been like, what exactly was the malware doing? I think it was really adware that was generating revenue as part of the story, to the best of my knowledge, right? But this post was more about the how. Like, starting with, when you get one of these devices, how do you take it apart? Like, there's no exposed screws. How do you take it apart? So it kind of builds on the previous post of how you build a lab. What tools do you need to have a security research lab? We talked about that in a segment last week. And I will be giving a webinar upcoming for Eclipsium on how to build a lab, which will have a lot more resources than we talked about. The show was more of a discussion. The webinar that I'll be putting together will have basically a shopping list for you with explanations of why and how you use some of the tools with direct experience from me, because I'm not the world's foremost hardware hacking firmware reverse engineer. Like, yeah, I've done some of that stuff. I work with people who do that stuff in a much deeper way than I do. But I've recently kind of built up my lab and done some projects. One of the projects was looking at Android TV devices. So this project, I learned so much from this, by the way, because it wasn't just the hardware. I got to use like tools to take stuff apart, like a spanner, or in my case, a Swiss Army knife, that I called my super duper elite hacking tool that I use to take apart one of the devices. I also got to use soldering irons, hot air rework stations, spy flash readers, Linux commands to mount the file system. What I didn't put in the article, there's a bunch of stuff I didn't put in the article yet, and there might be a follow-up article or more content being created from this. I used a disassembler specifically for Android, JDX, I don't even remember what it's called. I have it bookmarked, but there's a specific disassembler for Android. I popped some stuff into Ghidra. I was doing that level of stuff. Learning to use some of the ADB commands, Android debugger commands, that I didn't put, in the actual article. The Android debugger is amazing. You can dump memory from running processes with the Android debugger, which is something I didn't put in the article. So the amount of stuff that I learned from this project was just astonishing. So basically, in conclusion to this little introduction, and I'm happy to have a discussion, is I found that basically these devices do come pre-infected. Like, I did find one of the four had all of them had some kind of adware on it, is basically what I traced back to. But I also validated the research that others had done that, at least one of the devices I looked at had the exact same malware that people had talked about before. Oh, also I used packet sniffing tools as well, which is another project I want to embark on, because you don't want to just plug these devices in the network and let them do whatever they want. But you want to let them do enough under your observation. So I'm working on some tooling that will, I think, help me do that better in the future. There's also better automation that I could do with scripts for mounting these file systems and analyzing them. So this was a lot of fun. Moral of the story is, yes, these devices that ship from China, $25 to $30, do come with malware. Do not buy them. If you're going to buy them, either clean them using the commands in the resources that I linked to in the article, or put Linux on them, which you can do with some of the devices, which I also linked to in the article, or just use an NVIDIA Shield from a way more reputable company. Someone did ask me to look at Roku. Roku's a closed platform, which would be an interesting endeavor. So I've been having a lot of fun lately, and that's kind of the summary of everything that's been happening in the culmination of this post. So I also didn't want to become the world's largest collector of Android TV devices, and we only analyzed 4, and I only bought 4. And I bricked one that I want to go back to. I actually want to buy another one. Another tip is, if you're going to do this work, have two, because one of them, I brick. It's really funny. I was talking to my coworker Jesse, and he was laughing hysterically because he's done this work for a lot longer than I have and done a lot more of it. I'm like, Jesse, here's what I did. I bought this device. I'm like, I soldered on a serial header to it, and like I couldn't get it to work. And then I tried to manipulate the bootloader to root the Android on it, and I'm like, I kind of bricked it because I borked the bootloader. He's like, yeah, you're right on the right path. That's when that happens. I'm like, so then I had to desolder the chip and read the chip. He's like, yep. I'm like, then I didn't want to put it back, because putting an eMMC back on the board, yes, there's tutorials on YouTube. It's a pain in the ass, basically. So I'm like, I just threw it out. He's like, yep. He's like, that's par for the course, man. You're on the right path. So, but buy more than one, so that if you do go through that process and you bork one, I want to go back to the beginning and go, how do I root this device without borking the bootloader, right? So there's that.
Paul, I see your question here. How do you safely capture and manipulate network traffic from these devices? What did you try? Because I know how I did it.
So one of my coworkers, Dave Maynor, who's amazing, and my friend before he became a coworker here at Eclipsium, Dave's like, dude, one of the things you needed in a security lab is a packet squirrel. I'm like, oh, right. That's that device from Hack 5 that can, sits in line and can act as a transparent bridge, but do a whole bunch of other stuff. And I was like, that's cool. But like when I looked at the packet squirrel, Sam, I was like, that's more for like, I'm a pen tester and I want like an implant kind of thing. What I want as a security researcher, like side of the house, I want a device that's going to sit in line, and like, I don't really care about being stealthy. Like if the device is going to try and recognize that it's behind a transparent bridge, like then I'm in kind of like a different scenario. But like, let's say it doesn't. I want it to send traffic through. Here, I got one right here. I want it to send traffic through my device, like this Raspberry Pi right here, which is what I ended up building. And there were some instructions online on how to manipulate the networking so that you put all of your interfaces on a bridge, and then you plug your IoT device or whatever you're analyzing into one side, you plug your regular network into the other side, and it acts as a bridge, and then you have utilities within Raspbian OS or whatever OS you put on there to dump that traffic. I just use TCP dump. I used a little bit of TCP flow. Some of the tutorials I saw used Fiddler, but Fiddler does not run on ARM. But that's where so now I'm at the point, Sam, where I'm like, what tools can I put on a Raspberry Pi? Maybe not with a USB Ethernet. Now I want an Ethernet hat for the Pi, so I get two Ethernet devices at better speeds than USB. What tools can I put in there to analyze traffic from these devices?
Well, you're doing it from a hardware point of view. Mm-hmm. I did it with software. All I did was take a Mac and connect it with an Ethernet cable to the internet, and then share the Wi-Fi, and then run Burp, and then use the PF firewall to send the traffic to Burp.
Right. But here's my concern with these Android TV devices. I was concerned that the malware was going to send my Wi-Fi SSID and password to like China. So I didn't want to enable the Wi-Fi in any of these devices, because I could create a separate Wi-Fi network and do that whole.
That's what this does.
Yeah. And that's cool, and that works. There's lots of ways to skin this cat, right? But also now I'm thinking like, I want to let it resolve domains, but I want to see what it's resolving, and I also want the control to say like, don't resolve that domain, or resolve that domain to this IP address. And when it tries to resolve to that IP address, that's an IP address that I control. So I get whatever post or get request is coming from it. And then I want to be able to say, okay, well, like what happens if I allow that? So I want like a more methodical way to control its traffic. And I could be speaking on a term. Maybe someone's like, oh, you just use this, that, and the other thing, for that. So I think I want to create an IP tables rule set that helps me do that, right?
Yeah.
And that's not new. There's lots of examples and tutorials out there. I want something tuned. Like I basically have a dedicated Raspberry Pi so that if I'm analyzing a device, I can plug it in as a bridge, and like I have tools that I can work with to run scripts and collect all this stuff for analysis.
They built a device like that at CERT years ago when they went through all the Android apps that were available, and they found which ones of them broke HTTPS.
Yes.
They had a router in the middle that would send various kinds of incorrect HTTPS responses to see if it would be fooled.
And when you analyze the traffic on these devices, it's kind of scary. When you look at like what domain, like I'm like, hold on, like I haven't done anything with this. I ordered it from Amazon and I plugged it into my network. I've configured nothing on it. Nothing. Like I've gone into settings and I've enabled the Android debugger. That's all I've done. I haven't put my Wi-Fi details in. I plugged it in Ethernet and it's reaching out to google.cn. I'm like, what? Why? Why is that? It's reaching out to all these weird domain names. Some of them are for apps that are running on Android. And one of them, in my case, as you'll see in the article, is a domain name that's associated with a C2 channel for the copycat malware that was being installed on these Android devices. I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting. But that domain doesn't resolve anymore. So kind of a fun fact, when you're analyzing these devices, since people have done the research already and reported it, since some of these domains don't resolve, the stage 1 or stage 2 payloads actually don't get downloaded. So all that's on the device is the stage 0 malware, where I need help from the community, because the research that I've done, previous researchers have said I can see there's stage 0 malware in there. It's reaching out to a domain trying to get the next stage of malware, and it can't. But I couldn't figure out, and they couldn't figure out, how did it get there, and where does it live? And the best I could find was someone that wrote an article, the guy Daniel, who did amazing research. He's the guy that opened up Pandora's box and has a GitHub that you should check out. What's his name? I should give him a shout out on the show because he did amazing research. Daniel Milicic, he created a GitHub repository, and in there is where he states, like, I couldn't figure out where stage 0 was hiding on the ROM, which kind of frightens me, actually. Now I want to know. But I think I've got some people's in it. I started putting it out on social media, and the feedback I've gotten has been amazing. So I thank everyone for that. Someone said I'm doing the Lord's work. Because shouldn't be buying these devices and putting them in if they're pre-owned, right? Which is a whole supply chain thing. This is a huge supply chain problem. Consumers shouldn't be going to Amazon and buying a device and it already has malware on it. We shouldn't let that happen. We can't let that happen in security. We just can't.
Well, it's kind of inevitable unless we have like UL listing where there's some kind of security mark on the device.
Correct.
It reminds me of what I've been hearing Steve Gibson talk about. If you buy USB sticks on Amazon, most of them are fake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you crack them open, they're not. It's not actual flash ROM or what. I've seen a couple like that, right?
He found a bunch of them. They just only have a little bit of memory and they lie. So they pretend to be storing your files, but it's not stored. And when you try to read them, they're not there.
Oh, yeah. They lie about the size of the device, right? I've seen that. Yes. Right. Yes. Yeah.
And they found that essentially all the cheap ones are like that. So, this is going to happen if you just buy the cheapest product and there is no quality inspection, quality, certification on it.
Right. And so validating the supply chain, there's like 3 things, right? The first one requires collaboration between all of the suppliers in the supply chain, where they, like, starting from the beginning, they attest. So there's an attestation to, I've made this hardware. I attest it's really this hardware. I made this firmware to bring this hardware to life. And I attest that it is the firmware I intended to put on it. And then when I give it to the next supplier, they attest that, I got the actual hardware and firmware. And then I added my own stuff and I attested this is really my own stuff. Then the next level is there's a third party, like where I work at Eclipsium, that goes, yeah, we attest that, like, there's no funny business going on here in the supply chain. And we check the attestation from the vendors and, like, it's good. So we check we check lots of things to make sure that what you're getting is actually what you intend to get. The third layer is what, I'm doing and many others is once I get the device, now I'm reverse engineering it to make sure no one's lying, right? And it turns out that's super hard, man. Like, it took a long time. It's a lot of effort to do that.
So is there any mark on consumer devices so consumers can know whether their device has been through all those tests?
There's people that are trying to create that, Sam. There's been a few.
I've been hearing about it for years. Mudge, for 10 years,
Yes,
Mudge has been talking about
Cyber
UL listing.
Right.
It never seemed to happen, though.
No, never seemed to come to fruition, right? And there's been others that have tried.
Seems so simple. I mean, just test something simple like the OWASP top 10, and that would be a lot better than the others.
Right. Yeah. So it's dicey. You know, again, I do recommend, like, NVIDIA Shield devices are pretty good. The problem with NVIDIA Shield devices is they're 3 times the cost. So you can buy a cheap Android TV device for $25, or you can buy a Shield starts at like $100, right? So that's a big price differential. I mean, it could be, someone asked about what was baked onto the TVs, and I'm like, well, I mean, if you want to start sending me TVs, I'll take a look at them. They're a little more expensive than $25 Android TVs, but it's a very similar kind of thing. I hate the fact also that you can't just go buy a TV without smarts in it. I just want to buy a panel, like a monitor, but it's a TV, and I want to add my own smart TV to it, because I know I can go buy a device from like Google or NVIDIA or Apple. The likelihood of it containing all this malware, those companies do a much better job of making sure the stuff that's on their devices is not doing any funny business, if you will, right? Android actually has a whole attestation API where the app can check to see where it's running. If it's running in a bad environment, it won't run.
Well, you know, if you buy an Apple phone, you know that it's going to be a lot better than these cheap Android devices and under more control.
True. Right.
And if you buy an Iron Key USB, it's going to cost a lot more, but you know it's not going to be fake.
They still make those? That was really popular when we started the podcast, Sam.
Yeah, I think they're still out there. And it's just, that's fine. You can boldly charge 3 or 4 times as much because you guarantee quality.
I will say, if you're going to buy an Android TV device, though, you can totally buy one that you can manipulate. Like, you should buy one that you can ADB root. And one of the things I learned, one of the reasons why there's so much information online, that I had all these resources available to me online, is because people are rooting these devices not to check the supply chain like I was doing, but they're rooting them so they can customize them. Because how annoying is it when you get any Android device and you try and remove the Netflix app and you can't remove the Netflix app? Because they've locked down Android that through the interface you can't do that. But if you're ADB root, there's a command you go right in. You can uninstall that application. You can remove the files that it leaves behind, and you can wipe that application out. Now, you got to be careful. If you wipe out your launcher, you effectively break your device, because that's the app that runs. So they load the interface that allows you to run other apps. But you can totally swap that out with your own custom launcher, as I learned in this article. Yeah,
but I think they want to put pirate software on there.
And then the other thing is, I want to put pirated software on that, right? And people say Kodi. Like, Kodi in and of itself isn't evil. Like, you're loading Kodi so that you can load plugins that are allowing you to pirate content. Kodi by itself actually doesn't let you pirate content if you just install Kodi. So,
yeah, Android security is a lot of fun.
It is. There's a lot of great tools for analyzing it, too. I wish I could remember the name of that other tool. Someone's probably shouting it at me. It was one of my coworkers that recommended it, and there's a GUI version for it. And then when I loaded the GUI version for it, I remember seeing a screenshot in some of the posts that I had read that were they were using the same tool to analyze. They didn't put a screenshot in. They just didn't include what tool they were using. So, again, my post is more of like a how-to. Like, if you want to do this on your own, you can go read my post and then go start doing it on your own.
What does that tool do?
It reverse engineers the Android APK. So you give it an APK, and it gives you the source code, it gives you the directory tree, lets you navigate. You can search through the source code, the whole thing. It's
APK tool does, but that's command line.
Yeah, this was command line and GUI.
Dex. Yeah, there's a dex to jar.
Yeah, because classes.dex is one of the files within your APK that contains a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I've got that tool. I can find it.
what is that tool? Now I can't think of it. Did I install it on here? It begins with a J. Now I can't remember. I didn't put it in the post, of course, because it was kind of like beyond the scope of this first. Jeb decompiler? Is that? That's not it. No, that's the commercial.
JADX.
JADX. Thank you.
That's it. It's very nice. You're right. It makes right into a nice tree-structured Java you can read. You don't even need to read the Smalley.
Yes, Java, it's a command line and GUI tool for producing Java source code from Android, DEX, and APK files.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is why Android vulnerability research is so much fun, because you have the source code with every app, which is completely insane, and developers obviously don't understand this.
Correct. Yeah, so the Android stuff was actually pretty fun. And I didn't delve into the whole boot. I wish Tyler was on the show, because Tyler's done a lot of rooting of Android devices. That's a whole art and science in and of itself as well.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of root exploits, but they keep coming and going.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's not as bad as jailbreaking iOS, but it's pretty bad.
Yes. Yeah, it can get it depends too. I also ran in some encrypted file systems as well. So if you get the device to boot, and you can get an ADB root shell on it, the file system's decrypted because you've booted Android, and it's gone. And there's from what I understood, two different mechanisms for encryption, like primary ones. There's a whole history of it, but there's primary ones where it's like the full system encryption, and then there's individual file encryption, and they often combine them together. And so if you've pulled an image off of something and it's been encrypted, I've not found a really easy way to reverse that. They're basically go back and boot the device and then pull the files off. But I'm I have a full dump of the entire flash. So I don't know exactly where the keys are stored. I think I know where it stores. There is a partition where I think it stores the individual file level encryption, but unless you're decrypting the other level, I started to go down that path, and I'm this is getting way beyond the scope. Decrypting Android file systems is a whole research project in and of itself. And there's probably folks out there that have done it and can speak more about it than I can. And I would love to hear from you. I'd love to have you on the show, actually, to talk about, because Android is a whole specialty in and of itself.
I know the high-end devices do store the key in a secure container, sort of like a secure element, but I think it's in software, not hardware. Right. But it's supposed to be impossible to get the key. That's why the whole point of it is there's supposed to be no way to decrypt it without knowing the PIN. Otherwise, it's essentially useless.
Right. And it also depends on which version of Android they include on the device and how they've implemented the encryption, are both variables as well. So I was just you know what? I'm just going to go find a device that wasn't encrypting the file system. Although it begs the question, I bought the ONN 4K streaming box, did have an encrypted file system on it, and I'm what are you hiding? What? Really? Why? That's irking me right now.
Well, if it stops you from reverse engineering, that's one form of security.
Could be the reason, right?
Yeah.
Any case, Mandy, Aaron, we lost Josh. Mandy, Aaron, any questions on this topic that we've belabored for the first 20 minutes of the show?
No, I think it's very interesting. I think we talked about it on a few shows ago. It's do you actually, when you just said that it wasn't doing anything that clandestine, just ads and stuff, do people really need to be worried about buying the high-end devices, or can they just crack on and watch TV?
Great question, Aaron. My answer is absolutely yes, because even though I found evidence of adware on the system, the applications that run on Android in this context also have the ability to update. And I found evidence in a recent research paper where the supplier of these devices, to the best of my knowledge, the way they described it, I'll summarize, are in cahoots with the app developers to offer updates, which means you could get a $25 Android TV device, and you're it's got some adware. Maybe I'll disable that. But there's an app that's running on there that could auto-update and pull down malware. during an update. And so the suppliers actually give the app developers the ability to update these apps. So there is actually an application that I looked at, and it's called ADB Ups, and sometimes it's com adbups.foda firmware over the air. And so this application has gone through stages. If you trace the history of it, like Malwarebytes and other folks like that are like, oh, it was really bad. Like it was pulling down malware in 2017. Then it cleaned up its act and it was benign for a while. But then like later on the next year, it was doing malware again. So that's one of my concerns, Aaron, is that this stuff will continue to pull down malware behind the scenes.
But if it does pull down I mean, what kind of data is on the device that it would steal? Do you put in credit card numbers and passwords to subscribe to services or what?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is a question that I've had for, probably 15 years, Sam. I think you authenticate to your applications on there, Disney Plus, Netflix. If it's a Google device, you're putting your, a Google account on there as well. Now, there's protections against, some of those things. And the way they authenticate varies and differs and could be inherent protections in there where I'm not logging in, but to authenticate to the app, right? It gives me a URL, then I go on my phone and I authenticate through my phone, not the device. But then that app does authenticate, so it's got to have some kind of token or something that it can continue to authenticate as me, so that when I open Netflix, I get my account with my family members that show up on the screen, right? So there could be stuff like that.
Well, I've audited hundreds of apps, and about half of them just store a copy of your password.
That too.
So
right,
I wouldn't trust them to handle it securely.
Credential harvesting is certainly one of the attack vectors. So, Mandy, sorry, did you have questions, comments?
Well, you kind of ended up going into, because a lot of mine was about add-ups and about then just thinking for a layperson consumer, how effective and how easy would it be to install some anti-malware on their Android TV device?
Yeah, I think so it's a Russian antivirus firm called Dr. Web does have protection for Android TV devices. And I did see there's a lot of Android apps out there. So there's one, Sam, what's the one? TW something. There's one that lets you like root stuff and customize it. And it's called TW something. I saw it on XDA forums. There's like this whole world of Android hacking that I'm just really just kind of peeling off the first couple layers of the onion in my, in my research. So there's a couple of apps that let you root stuff. There are, Mandy, to your point, I did see references to other apps that would kind of help you clean malware and prevent against this ad stuff. Those in my mind are kind of like little rudimentary, kind of script kiddie-ish, if you will, kind of protections. Not great. To really clean it, I mean, you need an ADB root shell, and then you can go in there and you can clean some stuff to really scrub these devices. You can swap out apps and things like that.
But I think Mandy is right. There's like 10 commercial Android anti-malware softwares out there, and I think it's probably a good idea. They really should have one on your TV.
They should. I think there are. Yeah. Like I said, I think Dr. Web makes one that will install on your TV, right?
Well, I'm reluctant to advise any American to install Russian security software right now.
Completely agree. Bad example. They just happen to be one of the outlets that they're covering this, I believe, because they have a commercial product that plays on on these devices, right? So I think it's in their best interest to do that. But
I think Norton and McAfee have Android versions, and I think
Malwarebytes probably does too, because Malwarebytes researched someone from Malwarebytes wrote a great article that I referenced that was essentially what I did about 8 or 9 months ago. I mean, they basically walked through the same steps, and I linked to that post in my post. Which
one about Nathan was the one. Is that the one you're talking about from Malwarebytes?
Is it Nathan from Malwarebytes? Yeah.
Nathan from Malware, and that's a really good article, but it's a little bit disconcerting that it's from 2017.
It was. So was that? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Nathan also wrote one on January 30th of 2023.
Oh, okay.
It's titled Analyzing and Remediating a Malware-Infested T95 TB Box from Amazon. The T95 is one of the devices I also looked at as well. And Nathan Collier, January of this year, wrote a great article. I mean, Nathan deserves all the credit in the world because I didn't invent this stuff. I read people like Nathan's articles and tried to replicate what they did and apply that to different devices. So again, like I wasn't doing like all this original research. I was on the shoulders of giants, and Nathan did a great job. Nathan's article and Daniel's research are two of the best ones that I referenced in my post. So anyway, what do you say we move on? What else do we want to cover this week? What else is... we got to talk about Cisco. Good Lord. That's the big one this week. There was a little bit of a drama around this, right?
Tens of thousands of them are currently infected. Pretty gruesome.
I heard a number of like 75,000 Cisco iOS XE web interfaces. I believe that's numbered as web interfaces out there that they discovered. I'm not sure if that was 75,000 that are vulnerable. I know that there's
so 74,000 devices have exposed their web UI to the internet, and the vulnerability received maximum CVSS of 10 and is actively being exploited.
So in a lot of companies have produced code to go find these devices, right? Because this is it's basically a curl command from what I saw. It's a curl command to know if you're infected, right? I also think discovering if it's vulnerable or not is fairly straightforward as well. If your device is actually exposed. Also, I was talking with someone, I think, before the show, and I remember working for the university in the early 2000s, and I was taking a lot of SANS classes and studying vulnerabilities, and one of the families of vulnerabilities were against the Cisco iOS web interface, and they're just being like heinous vulnerabilities in the web interface 20 years ago. And I believe in the current infrastructure I had at the university, and we were in a big network upgrade at some point as well. I was like, look, and as a security person, I worked either on the network team or very closely with the network team, and had developed a great relationship with all of them. And I remember all of them very, very fondly. I can still consider them dear friends. I'm like, guys, look, we just need to disable this. Like, we don't use the web interface on any of our Cisco stuff. I'm like, historically, it has been a vulnerable piece of software. It's functionality we don't need. Let's reduce our, attack surface, and let's just disable it. Like, if we're not going to use it, especially, and that just was a resounding that that makes perfect sense. Like, we can do that. That's pretty easy. Let's just go do that. I'm like, yeah, let's do that. But now here we are in freaking 2023, and there's 74,000 people that we found at Shodan with what are you using the web management interface, especially correct me if I'm wrong, Cisco iOS XE software, XE is their high-end router. These are huge routers, right? If I remember correctly.
Bleeping Computer just put out an article saying there are 34,000 of them currently infected. It's ridiculous.
Wait, 34,000 right now?
Yes, as of today.
Jeez.
But XE is their management platform. Cisco XE is an open and flexible operating system optimized for the future of work. So is it the operating system that's running on the router, or is this the operating system that you're using to manage it? Products supported by Cisco XE. This is I feel like I should know this. I haven't obviously been keeping up with my Cisco.
According to this article, the products running the software include switches, routers, access points, wireless controllers, etc. So it's just, the iOS that runs on every Cisco device.
Oh, but you folks got to hear this. If you Google search for Cisco iOS XE, click the I'm feeling lucky, takes you to the first link, which is a Cisco product website. Features and benefits. It says connect, secure, and automate. Under secure, No, I don't want to chat with someone. Under secure, it says Cisco IOS XE helps protect against modern cyber attacks. Its enhanced platform integrity, security, and resilience yield trustworthy data. God, I threw up in my mouth a little bit just reading that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Everybody always says, we're unhackable. That's the
Right.
kiss of death.
So it says Catalyst 9000, Catalyst 9800. This is the... God. It's got... Well, since it says iOS, I'm assuming this is the operating system running on the device, not a management platform. Okay. Okay. I apologize. I haven't kept up in the Cisco world in some time. But yeah, it's bad.
Yep. And I assume there's an update that fixes it, although I'm not sure.
I don't think an update. Wait, was an update done? I don't think there was one done last I checked.
I guess you're right. I don't see anything here because there really needs to be. I guess they just tell you, just don't internet expose the web interface, which is what should have been happening all along anyway.
True, but I mean, also you're just... So we're talking about this at work. If you've got a class of systems or services or whatever, right? And you're like, well, they're vulnerable to stuff.
Yeah.
And the security
Right.
advice is, well, just put those in a different network. Put those in, we used to call it DMZ. Put those in its own network. Segment this off. Use network segmentation. I'm like, you're just taking the problem and you're putting it somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And so even if, like, what is your goal with segmentation? To go, well, no one should get to this web interface on Cisco IOS XE. Like, no one should ever be able to connect to it. I'm like,
Well,
that's not reality. Reality is if you're segmenting it, you're going to allow some access to
Well,
that.
logically, you should put a VPN in front of it. Then you have to sign in to get to it, and that would amount to the same thing. I mean, you're right. I checked in this article. It does say no patches available, but you can protect your organization by disabling the web interface. But I think putting it behind a VPN concentrator would be a logical, reasonable solution.
But why enable this service by default in these installs?
Because some engineer somewhere 5 years ago decided that should be the way it is and has no damn good reason to do it.
Well, to make it easier for the people that don't know anything.
20 years ago,
GUI is the
20 years
first way
ago,
people like to use it.
I helped write guides for securing Cisco iOS through SANS, actually. And like one of the most fundamental basic things we built in 20 years ago was disable all the web services on your devices. That was standard hardening guidance. Why do we have to provide hardening guidance like that even now? Like, why isn't, like, Red Hat learned? I mean, one of the ways I got into security was I took Red Hat 5.2 20 plus years ago and I put it on the internet and I got owned. And I was like, oh, because it enabled all this stuff by default. And now we see Linux largely has learned that, oh, we need to not do that. Like, even Raspberry Pi is like, let's not put a default password on there anymore. Like, let's make the user set it because people get owned.
You know, Microsoft figured this out in 2000.
Mm-hmm. You got hackers.
Cisco.
Josh has hackers at his door.
Yeah.
Oh, I think he's muted. Josh, I think you're muted.
That's my 15-month-old, and my wife just took a picture of her. Apparently now she can open doors.
Yep.
So,
Have you tried to pick locks yet?
I may or may not have a lockpick set with her name on it. I may or may not have practice locks for both of my girls and lockpick sets for both of them. I'm not saying I do.
Why not? Why not just say?
John Strand and I have very similar stories when our kids were younger, and you get those plastic things over the doorknobs. Your door wasn't it was a lever, not a knob. But if you have a regular doorknob, you get the plastic thing that goes over it. So when the child grabs it, kind of just spins on it. And I think John and I share this very similar story of our kids picking up some kind of like toy or like block, and then going up to the plastic thing and smashing it so the plastic thing comes off the door and then opening the door.
My 5-year-old stuck like a not a chopstick, but something similar looking into it to jam it against the doorknob and then turn it.
Yeah. We breed hackers. I mean, I locked my office at home, and my oldest used a crowbar to get into the office. Like,
Wow.
oh, okay, that's gotta up my game. I constantly have to up my game to prevent my kids from hacking stuff, and I usually lose. Just saying. Anyway.
Congratulations, I think.
Right? Dude, there are times where I'm like, I'm so mad, but I am so proud all the same time. All the same time. You know, to this, like, because I put this stuff on Facebook, and Boris does as well. And Boris and I have chatted about creating a DEF CON talk about how our kids have hacked us. I think we could do, I'll build upon that, Boris, if you're listening. We could do a specialized, like, fail panel style at DEF CON of how our kids have hacked us, and have a panel discussion about it. And I think it would be both informative and hilarious.
So when we run Spawn Camp, so B-Sides Delaware and B-Sides DC had some of the biggest children events at any conference.
Sure.
Okay. And by the way, we just held our
how'd that go?
event.
Yeah.
So it rained all friggin' day, which sucked.
Of course.
But I'll tell you what, it was so nice not having to worry about the CFP. So for anybody that doesn't know, B-Sides Delaware and B-Sides DC held a co-event at a state park near Baltimore, Gunpowder Falls State Park. Beautiful, beautiful place. We rented a picnic pavilion, which had a playground and running water and electricity, and we had a 20-foot inflatable screen and a projector. And
was that under a tent because it was raining, or
no? Picnic pavilion. They had a wooden pavilion.
Okay.
With like 10 picnic tables under it.
Okay.
And
so you were able to have some semblance of a area that wasn't exposed to the rain. Yeah.
We didn't have too many people because of the weather, and because we only popularized it like 3 weeks ahead of time.
Sure.
But we didn't have talks. If you wanted to do a talk, I brought a screen and a projector. If you didn't want to do a talk, come sit, relax. I brought like 30 pounds of pulled pork and
so did people
Taylor ham.
People ate pulled pork tacos and sandwiches, and did anyone give a talk?
No, we had nobody give a talk. But actually, the best piece of food that I made all day was a cheeseburger with Taylor ham, fried egg, and pulled pork on it.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
It was amazing. I was like, that's cool. I need to make one for myself.
We don't have talks, but we have awesome burgers with fried eggs and pulled pork.
Why not?
Sure.
And it was honestly, it was so nice to see everybody. We had a lovely time. It was a conference without the stress. Mm-hmm. Like, we ran a conference that we didn't stress about. It was amazing.
I'd like to see one of those where people do some talks, though. And I think we could. We talked. I think about this last week, right? Yeah, I think this is a good idea.
If the weather had been nice, we had people that said, "I'm going to bring a talk." I'm like, "Great, bring it." I bought a 20-foot inflatable screen. I had a big, huge projector that's daytime capable. We were absolutely ready and willing to give talks, no problem. But it was sort of grim and dark, and so and wet. So people were like, now mind you, my kids. Oh my God, my kids are mud puddle like mongrels.
Oh yeah,
They were like,
I know, yeah, dude.
My 15-month-old took off her shoes and was screaming until we let her into the mud puddles. But it was,
that's kids.
We went through like 3 changes of clothes each and ended up in bathing suits. That's how bad it was. Okay.
Yeah, if kids can get dirty, they will get dirty. Yep.
But normally we have a huge kids thing, and the kids, like, we've taken children and put safety glasses on them with number 2 Phillips screwdrivers, and they've taken apart multiple computers. You would not believe how amazing it is to watch a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old do lock picking and be better at it than me. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, it is so awesome. Children.
Josh, what's along those lines? What's the age cutoff you think to do soldering? Because I don't want children to burn themselves.
With a parent, I would say,
depends on the child. It does. You're right. You're right. Yep.
I think that no child should really solder before probably 7.
Yeah.
And even 7 is pushing it.
It depends on the kid. So I'm teaching.
Kid.
So my oldest is 15, and he does welding. And he's now like picking up solder. I'm like, oh, like you're starting with an unfair advantage to other 15-year-olds that don't do welding. And I'm like, dude, like you're already on par with me. Like, I'm a lousy solderer, And like he's already like on his way to surpassing me. It's like, oh, like I get this. And so we're just building stuff. We built a one of the original TV Be Gone kits I put on social media, and it was so much fun. But again, I don't want to. I teach kids to come over to the house, like all my kids' friends. I teach them all how to lockpick. Largely, the parents all still like me, which is great because I teach ethics along with it. I'm like, look, I'm giving you permission to pick the locks that I have here. When you go home, the only thing that differentiates you from a criminal, someone who's going to go to jail, is permission. You have permission here, totally fine. You go home, you pick locks, you better make sure you have permission from your parents, if it's their house, to pick those locks. And no issues.
In effect, any tool that you teach a child to use, from a soldering iron, a lockpick, a firearm, a circular saw, you have to teach a child that is capable of emotionally and mentally understanding and handling that, as well as the ethical issues of that tool.
It's so rewarding. My middle son, one of his friends, he was coming with another parent coming to my house, and the other parent said all he talked about the whole time was he hopes he's going to be able to pick locks while he's here. So I'm like, I want to get the set right now. Go have at it. He's just loves it, right? It's so rewarding to have that environment for kids. So
I will tell you a case study. Corbin, who was at one of the first B-Sides Delawares at 7 years old, I think he said, is now runs our spawn camp, okay, our kids events, and he's at MIT, and he is like he's doing things that I don't understand. Okay, he's amazing, absolutely amazing. And by the way, he's an amazing girlfriend. Corbin, if you're listening to this and you screw it up, I'm gonna kick your ass. But like, it is rewarding, and they take things from it. They learn, they grow, they see the reality of the universe and how big it is and how wonderful it is and how many amazing fields there are. You know, your son is welding. Is he going to be doing, theoretical physics? Maybe not. But is he doing something that satisfies him artistically and creatively?
Oh yeah. He's got a bright future ahead of him. Dude, there's not enough welders and people like in the trades like that in this country, right? I mean, it's the same thing in cybersecurity. So, I feel like we need to do everything we can to encourage that. So, make sure we chat after the show. Hopefully my friend
welder makes about 200, by the way.
Right. It's awesome. So anyway, back to the Cisco story. Aaron, I know you had some notes on the Cisco story. Was there any? You said you had a note in here that exploiting this vulnerability, by the way, system level or at the iOS privilege level 15, which is the highest privilege level on iOS. This is just also, I think the other thing was Cisco put out this advisory and failed to mention the piece of research that said there were 74,000 devices exposed to the internet. And there was 34,000 that were vulnerable. Like, they failed to mention that with some of the controversy around this.
Yeah, I just don't think it looks very good on Cisco at all. And the mitigation is nearly like, I don't know, telling a child just don't do something because we don't know how to fix it. It just it looks really bad on Cisco. Hopefully they're going to come out with something soon that'll automatically find this. And then they're like, okay, well, this is where the implant lies. So you could actually go on and look where the implant is. Well, how about you just fix it?
Yeah. Or how about, I don't know, on the higher end devices, don't include a web interface. Don't you talk to really?
That's blasphemy. Not include a web interface. What's wrong with you, man? How else can you give the consumers a solid user experience?
Default.
If you're using, seriously, contact us. If you're using Cisco IOS XE software and you use the web interface, I want to hear from you. Have you seen people use the web interface? Do you know of situations where the web interface is? I mean, I'm asking seriously. I could be wrong. There could be an absolute 1,000% legitimate usage for this web interface, and that's why Cisco is putting it in there and enabling it by default. I don't want to discount this scenario. However, in my experience, I don't find that to be the case. I just don't. I have someone I can ask as well. which I will. My Cisco expert friend.
Real Cisco.
Everyone should have a real Cisco expert friend, right? That's not a security person, but like does Cisco stuff, right? We want someone in the trenches that's working on this stuff, right?
I'll tell you what. Any real Cisco person is going to tell you command line only.
Yeah, that's kind of my feeling, Josh. It is, really is.
I'm sorry, Aaron. I stepped on you. I apologize.
Go ahead, Aaron.
No, it's okay. I was just saying, Dr. Doug knows lots about Cisco.
He does.
Loves covering Cisco.
He does. We should talk. Yeah, he wanted to be here tonight too, but had other obligations.
Phone him up.
We should phone him up. He's probably done with his meeting by now. Come on. Let's see. Oh, if you're looking for malware samples, really quick, and this is nothing new. This is just I like to talk about my experiences in working and bring that on the show, right? Like someone asked, "Hey, do we have a sample for this malware?" And I happened to see, like in my news reading, that VX Underground has a GitHub with a whole bunch of malware source code on it. And I'm like, oh, we should look here. But then also, I think that they separate the malware source code from their other collection of malware that lives on their website as well. So if you go to the My Story number 10 and you go to their GitHub, there's a bunch of samples there, right? But then also, just below the VX Underground graphic, there's a download malware samples at this link. If you go to that link, there's a bunch of other malware samples. So if you're looking for malware samples for research purposes, like, come on, people, use it for good. But if you're looking for malware samples, as many of us are, for various legitimate purposes, you should totally check that out. Of course, now it's not loading on my computer, but it was earlier. Oh no, it's loading. It's just slow. And I did find, I was looking for TrickBot on there, and I did find it is in there. If you dig around in samples and then families, I did find TrickBot in there. Actually, one of my coworkers pointed that out to me. Props. I work with awesome people, so thanks to all the awesome people that I work with at Eclipsium. So there's a story there. Just, if you're looking for stuff in terms of malware samples, it's a good place to go.
It's amazing. Gitbot, Jesus Christ.
It's a Gitbot.
GitHub is an amazing. The Gitbot grabs the GitHub never mind. And the GitHub is a great place for malware samples, and it was all ingested to make GitHub Copilot. What does that mean about the code you get out of that AI? Anyway.
Right. Oh, yeah, there's that. I used to run Squid. Did anyone run Squid Proxy back in the day?
Oh my God, that's a long time ago.
Right. And so just for context, I wanted to, when I saw that dozens of Squid Proxy vulnerabilities remain unpatched 2 years after disclosure was the headline, I was like, oh, I remember Squid Proxy. So back in the day, so I talked about when I was at university. After university, I worked for another company, again, roughly 20 years ago. And it was interesting to see the difference between, no, I have it backwards. I worked for the other company before I went to university. In any case, not everyone had the bandwidth that universities do back in the day. Like universities, we had, gig fiber to the internet in mid to early 2000s. We had gig fiber to the internet. That was a lot back. I mean, today that's table stakes, but like back then that was a big deal. Before that, you probably had some T1s that was connecting to the internet. What were T1s? T1s, Josh, were like 1.544
megabits.
1.54 megabits to the internet. And that wasn't a lot. So you had to have multiple T1s, right, to get enough bandwidth out to the internet. And still that wasn't a lot of bandwidth. So we ran Squid proxies. Now it served two purposes, right? It kind of gated that internet access. So if you wanted to go out and browse the web, you had to go through our proxies. So we blocked that access and said, you want to get access to the internet, you browse the web, got to go through the Squid proxy. But the Squid proxy was not just a gating factor that added a security element to it. It was also a caching proxy. So when the first person went to the website, it would cache those images and stuff. So when the subsequent person went there, they would get those cached images and not eat up the 1.54 megabits of internet bandwidth that we had set aside. So it was a bandwidth caching thing. It was great software back then. We ran it on FreeBSD. It was really cool. But it turns out it's still in. So like, I'm like, how many people are using Squid proxies today? Turns out there's a lot of folks using them like under the covers for caching services and proxy services and things like that. An independent researcher found 55 vulnerabilities in total in the Squid proxy code, and stated that they just don't have the resources to fix them all. Now the feeling, the mindset that I get from this researcher is that they're not mad. They're just like, this poor project doesn't have enough resources to fix all these vulnerabilities. And some of these vulnerabilities are remote code execution, and they can't fix them all. In the article that I linked to from Security Week, like the Squid team wasn't available for commentary. And it's, likely probably a bunch of volunteers that are maintaining this code. It goes back to like one of our first interviews in 2023, right? Josh was, it was Bob Martin and Brian Bellendorf, right? They talked about how open source software is like the rock that you pick up in the field that you use to build your wall. I think Brian might have changed that to be like, it's a piece of cabbage that you pick up that has a life expectancy, right? Because it goes bad after a certain period of time, perhaps. But these are like free things that you pick up to help you achieve your goals. The person who produced that rock or that head of cabbage or whatever analogy you want to use is not going like, oh, I have to produce the most secure software in the world, right? They're like, I don't know, I made a tool. It's useful for people. Security's not on the tops of their mind. They're volunteers. And we've talked a lot about that, even just this year. So I empathize with the Squid proxy team. I want to see these vulnerabilities fixed, but it sounds like they just need help, right? And you can't put it all on this team that's just volunteering. You can't put the security of all this stuff on them. I don't know. Maybe you can.
It is all volunteers. It was an NSF grant back, I think, 15 or 20 years ago. But now they're all volunteers, and there's only a few people on the About Me page. And I give them a lot of credit. Please don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah. It's great. I described a scenario where I use it as great software.
But, like, there's about 8 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. I'm so sorry. 7 people are running the entire project, and there's thousands of people using it. Like, I didn't even think about it for the last 10 years, probably.
You don't even know how many people are using it. You say thousands of people using it. How many people are just taking it? And what the article from Security Week said was that people are taking it, using it, embedding it in their projects, right? So it's part of other people's projects.
You know, I'm kind of curious. Like, how many packages that you used 15 years ago are still being used by 10,000 companies out there today? Like, how many SendMail installations are still out there?
Right.
Okay. Sam, tell me a tool you used 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, that you stopped using. What's that?
No, I'm still using Windows, right?
Oh, okay, fine. But when you stopped using a long time ago, I gotta wonder. What was that, sir?
I don't know. Hard to remember what I quit using.
It's all the tools. I mean, look, I put my Raspberry Pi, right? I'm using IP tables. I'm using Fiddler came up in my research. The new one, what is the new IP tables thing that someone recommended? NF tables, or all those tools. I'm like, I need these tools to manipulate network traffic. TCP flow. TCP dump you can trace back to like the beginning of time.
Yeah, but some things are still being used. But like, I don't know. It's so weird.
Network. So let's limit it to network services such as Squid, right?
Okay.
Like Samba, SendMail. I mean, you trace these things back.
SendMail. Showdown says 266,000 people are still using SendMail. Does that blow your mind?
I mean, it's not surprising, right? I mean, you could do Exim, you could do Postfix, you could do a number of them, and they're still
350,000 are still using Samba. Publicly
on the
available.
internet, publicly on the internet.
Yeah. That is available to see from the internet. Weirdly enough, most of them are Pakistan and the Russian Federation, not the United States.
That's interesting.
That's crazy. The United States is a far third. Pakistan is 126,000. The Russian Federation is 109,000. The United States is 13,000.
That's the thing with open source. I mean, Squid's a great example, right? Of open source software that's just not going to die, right? Like the work has been put in to create a great tool, and we're maintaining, and it's not seeing less adoption. It could be seeing more adoption as time goes on. It's the de facto standard, right? And whose responsibility is it to make sure it's secure? I guess everyone's. And quite frankly, who wants to jump into the Squid project and go, let's go fix some vulnerabilities? Like, it's not a job that everyone's lining up to volunteer for, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, but this rolls out to hey, hi, S-bomb guy. This rolls out to software bill of materials.
Yep.
This rolls out to zero trust. This rolls out to supply chain security. This rolls out to topics we've been talking about for how many years now? So let me ask you, Mr. Eclipsium dude, how much firmware is out there on devices that are still in use in an industrial section or industrial area, but that haven't been used commercially in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that haven't been updated, even if they are used commercially in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? I mean, let's be serious. This is a fact of life now. This is not just finding, grandma's refrigerator and it still works perfectly. This is finding grandpa's pacemaker and it still works perfectly. Okay. And mom's Nest thermometer that hasn't been on the internet for 7 years and doesn't have any updates.
Thermostat, right? Yeah.
Thermostat, sorry. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, because you make something and it works fine. Why would you replace it or update it?
Well, planned obsolescence actually makes sense for things with code. Okay.
Yeah, but that's not.
But on the other hand,
reality didn't pan out that way.
There's a silver lining still, as far as I know. Go ahead.
What you need to do is sell devices and charge twice as much and advertise that they have no smart features and therefore will keep working and be secure.
Well, yeah,
Wait, say that again.
I think, but I think what Sam's coming down to, Josh, is something that a view that you and I share, is that we want to buy a TV, and I don't want it to be smart. I want it to be a friggin' display. I don't want it to have, and by smart, I mean I don't want it to have any network connectivity. I want it to have apps. I just want it to function as a TV because it's way harder to hack if it doesn't have these smart features. And then I want in this case, enterprise or consumer to choose what is smart. But the world we live in today, everything is smart. Everything is connected. And that's going to breed a lot of issues, right?
And pretty soon it's all going to have AI.
And it's all going to have AI.
Oh, shut up. I'm going to hit you. When will your
AI is going to be able
cheaper?
to infect all of it, right?
When will your car start getting cheaper because it sells your driving habits and it sells which stores you drive past?
That's already there. There's an insurance you can get that's cheaper if you put a monitor on your car that reports back to the insurance company, and I couldn't put it in my car because it was too old.
They've had that for a while. There's like a 4G, 5G cellular modem that connects to the OBD2 port that sends your stuff back to the insurance company. And if you're willing to install one of those devices, you get cheaper insurance. Josh is laughing. I'm not sure what you're laughing at, Josh.
I just saw Gus's note. He asked me if I could take the button up off so I'd be a floating head for Halloween because
you are. Yeah, you're wearing a black
t-shirt.
Or green. You're wearing a green T-shirt.
Yeah.
That's just creepy. Put your shirt back on.
Or just take your shirt off and go bare chested.
No, anything but that.
Only for you, Aaron.
Chicken.
Only for you. It's how smart do you want your TV to be? How much of your information do you want sold? How well do you want to be served? What conveniences do you want? Do you want to have cheaper because make it convenient instead of more? I mean, you go to the supermarket, the more convenient they make it, the more they charge. You know, if you buy a pineapple, it's $3. If you buy a sliced up pineapple, it's $7. Okay. But if your TV sells your viewing habits, your TV is $100 off.
Yeah.
Okay. $200 off, $300 off. TVs
But
don't
also
actually make any money anymore.
Back to the supermarket or really any retail chain, harp on the privacy bit for a moment. You can save money. That's how they pitch this. You save money if you sign up for our reward card or our credit card. And like, you're not saving. Like, how many times have you wanted to have this conversation with the cashier behind the counter, right? Like, I know you're trying to like sell me on this thing, but I just want to educate you for a moment. Like, you're selling my data, which is why you can give me a discount on your stuff. Like, you're not understanding the economics behind this. You're pushing for me. And like, sometimes they get kind of like almost combative when they're like, I don't understand. You could save $100 right here today at the cash register. I'm like, yeah, but my privacy is worth way more than that. You don't understand. You're selling my data. Yeah, I get a free coffee today. But
wait.
the app is collecting. They're selling my data in the back end to pay for that coffee. Like, I'm just.
But there's a simple solution, and I learned it at DEF CON like 8 years ago. You just give them the Microsoft main contact number everywhere you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they ask for your phone number. I'm like, no, you're not going to get my. I want to buy some stupid crap at Home Goods, and you want my phone number. Like, are you going to call me and see if my discounted cologne, how's that working out for you, Paul? I don't know. I don't want to get my phone number.
The funny thing is, most stores you can just use Jenny's number, right? And the local area code and Jenny's number. And the funny thing is that I realized that I'm old enough that most people that are young these days don't know what Jenny's number is.
8675309.
Oh, that.
8675309.
That's cool.
And now Mandy's looking at me funny, like, no, please don't sing. So, but
the karaoke.
like,
I think
seriously.
Mandy's on mute, but the karaoke competition will be held later in December when everyone comes up here. Security Week will sing karaoke.
I will not be singing karaoke, just to be clear.
Yes, you will.
Oh dear God! If we record it, somebody dies.
A few of these, Josh, you'll be singing karaoke with me.
In the list of things that Josh hears somewhat regularly, put your shirt back on and quit singing.
We need a T-shirt with sayings for each of the hosts.
I tell you what, we could do "Careless Whisper" as a duet, Josh. It would be memorable. Just saying.
Memorable is not necessarily good.
That's true.
Memorable.
I didn't say good. I said memorable.
Memorable. You are correct, sir. You are indeed correct. You're technically correct. The best. Oh dear God Almighty. Okay. How about we do an article?
So.
I want to talk about Paul's number 3 and then Aaron's number 3.
Oh, yes.
And then
Thank
Sam's 1.
So this is a really lame hack. I just want to throw this out here. Like, this is really lame. And I think it was DEF CON this year that Larry came back.
That's why I was bringing this up.
And he was like, dude, I got weird, like, Bluetooth connection, BLE Spam. I think he even called it that. And we were both kind of enamored with it. And then I embarked on this whole, like, I'm like, I got to know how this works. And Larry was like, a lot of us were like, I know how this works. And then we pranked all of our friends and family because we were like, haha, like, your Apple iPhone or whatever is receiving a message that you've got some new Beats headphones that want to pair, but it's really just me spoofing the messages. Right. And you can do this on, this author actually talks about doing it. I actually want to do this now as an exercise. I think it was this one talking about Arduino. Had like an Arduino board or any Android, as explained in his previous blog. So this is mobile-hardware.com. Anything that can create a BLE packet can do this thing. Like, this is not hard. So it spoofs a message that a Bluetooth low energy device or Bluetooth device wants to pair, it does it over BLE. What this article said was you can now do Windows and Android because Windows has Swift Pair and Google's Fast Pair service works similarly. So what it means, in the picture, he shows a Flipper Zero spoofing these messages on Android, iOS, and Windows simultaneously. And I'm like, oh damn. This just means I can annoy more people with this hack. This is awesome. So today, while we were doing SOC Analyst Appreciation Day for Devo, which went really well, Devo's a great company, awesome people to work with. Kayla and Jackie were here all day. They're amazing. And so in between segments and such, I updated my Flipper Zero on the off chance that I'm running Rogue Master. So I put the latest version of Rogue Master on here. And turns out I've got a new app called BLE Spam. And the first thing that comes up in the BLE Spam app, this is the lamest hack. Like, if you're going to do this, like, go research how it works behind the scenes. Go build something more advanced than, like, all I did was update firmware on this, which means I downloaded a file from the internet. I went to a QFlipper app and I said install from file and then updated it. I got the app and I can now push start. And now it's sending everything. It's called the kitchen sink, right? So now if I pick up my phone, I should. Oh, yeah, it's right there. Now look, it says, hey, do you want to pair with this? And it works great. It works flawlessly. And if I clear that message, yeah, look, another one comes up and it says, you need to pair with some Pixel Buds. And then I clear that, and Goose is getting in the next room on his phone. Like, he's like, please stop. Please stop. It's friggin' awesome. And I didn't think the range on the Flipper went that far, so I will stop it so we're not spammed. It works great, which I think is really awesome and really fun.
What I'm hearing, Paul, is that annoying people is your, like, joie de vivre. Like this is your joy in life. I can annoy many people at the same time.
I think if one of your goals with your Flipper Zero is not to annoy people, like, you're missing the point of having a Flipper Zero. Also, like I said, if you have one, you should go, well, how can I do this on a Raspberry Pi based device? How can I do this on an Arduino? Like, how does it work? Dig in a little bit. Don't just be a script kiddie and go, oh, look what I can do with my Flipper Zero, because I hate that. Like, you want to be a hacker, you got to understand how things work and, like, why they work the way that they do. And so, anyway, I think this is really super cool. I wish Larry were here, because Larry's going to be excited when he finds out about this. You can also do this with an Android device. But the other thing is you can send custom notifications. But on an Android device, you have to first enable include debug results from settings, Google, devices and sharing devices. It's disabled by default. But if you enable that, now you can receive custom notifications. So it's not just a predetermined set of what can actually pair to trigger these messages. You can get one that you've discovered a BLM spot, and BLM in this case means something that I won't say on the show. But anyway, I'll let you go read the post and figure it out for yourself. But you can make custom messages, and people have made custom off-color messages. So
Code Brown.
That is included. It's not Code Brown, but includes a local acronym. Anyway, like the in your area kind of thing ads that you see. Anyway, similar to that. But that's my story number 3, which I just think is a really super annoying and a lot of fun. But again, a good learning you should learn how, look under the covers and learn how this works. I like that this attack is kind of morphing into this more annoying realm. Because, Josh, it's about being annoying, is what I'm saying.
Hey, being annoying is an underrated skill. And, Paul, I think that you are, like, one of the masters of that. I must, hands down, accord you that title.
I mean, what I like about the flipper is I can put it in my pocket and break it out and be annoying at any time in a lot of different scenarios, Josh. I can be in a retail store that has customer assistance and cause customer assistance to happen anywhere in the store. Like, it's super annoying. I like the
So what
the
you're saying
option
is a
if I
flipper is
so
sort of
choose.
like a penis.
It has to be annoying in scenarios that you choose. It's true.
And don't whip it out, without
You
good
don't.
reason.
That was poor choice of words. Poor choice of words.
Oh, I expected Aaron to be, a little more.
Yeah, I
gleeful
know.
with this, but-
Aaron, what's going on, man? Aaron, did you get your Flipper Zero yet? You got to get a Flipper Zero.
It wasn't that long ago. I looked at getting his Flipper Zero, and they didn't actually sell them in the UK. I would have had to have shipped it from America. I don't know if that's changed now, but I don't know.
You just
Send me
need-
your address. I'll send you.
Yeah,
one. It's not a
we'll
problem.
see. We'll make sure you get one, Aaron. You
Flipper
should have
Zeros
one.
everywhere. It's like, I know, I dread to think how many Flipper Zeros you've all got now. I've definitely seen you with at least two, Paul, because I've seen one in a case and one out of a case.
I do. I have two. I have one that is in a case that has a Wi-Fi dev board on it that I leave dedicated to having the Wi-Fi dev board. And then I have one that doesn't have a Wi-Fi dev board. So two reasons. One, I have access to all of the GPIO pins on there because that's super useful for a lot of reasons. And also, I can run the Rogue master firmware on this one, which is like kind of like bleeding edge. And I'm like, yeah, if it breaks, like I have another one with a more stable, like Unleashed or Extreme, or I definitely don't run the stock firmware on any of them. But I feel like Rogue Master is really bleeding edge because again, like they had this app already on it when I updated today. So
other than upsetting the production staff and driving them insane, which is probably a hobby, what's the most fun that we can have out of a Flipper Zero?
I think the scenarios I described are, look, use it responsibly, first of all, right? And if you are going to have fun, my advice is always leave things as you found them. So you can do lots of you can do RFID stuff, but also infrared stuff. And if you're messing with stuff, leave it. So if you're in a public setting and you're changing a channel on a TV or turning it off, like, then just put it back the way you found it, right? Like, don't just cause trouble for causing trouble. Like, in other words, if you're going to be a hacker in that kind of setting, be respectful enough and smart enough to leave things as you found it. If you don't know how to do that, practice first, right? Don't just take your Flipper Zero and just go, oh, I've never done this before. Like, let's see what it does. Like, oh, crap, I just messed up that air conditioner and I don't know how to turn it back on in the restaurant. Like, that's not cool. That's not the hacker spirit or ethos, right? So you can do stuff like that, Aaron, right? You can interact with infrared, RFID, sub-gigahertz, Bluetooth as evidence in this application, and lots of other stuff.
Can I go with James? Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, it's okay. They're like a general purpose. They're a cyber jackknife.
Yeah, it's a Swiss Army knife, right? It's not the best. This is the way I've described it in the past. When you get a Swiss Army knife, it comes with scissors. Not the greatest pair of scissors in the world. Will it cut stuff if you needed to? Sure. Flipper Zero, same thing. All the tools and chipsets on it are very akin to a Swiss Army knife, right? You want to do some real RF hacking stuff, go get a Hack RF. You want to do some other hackery kind of stuff with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, Raspberry Pi, various dongles. Way better at that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Can I go all like
ahead,
James Bond if I'm in Vegas in a hotel, and then the people that clean your rooms are going along with their card, and they have their card hanging from it, and that'll open multiple rooms. Can I clone that and then just go messing about in people's rooms? Obviously,
Josh, back me up here, but I'm saying you're going to want a Proxmark and know how to use that if you're going to do anything serious cloning RFID. Because there's limitations.
Or the iCopy.
Yeah, or the iCopy. And there's limitations on the Flipper for the various like key encryption mechanisms with the RFID. Some of them aren't as great on the flipper.
The I-class is even hard for the iCopy. Okay. I have some of the add-ons for it. And it's still a pain in the ass. I can't even get some of them. I'm not going to lie. The HackRF, the Portapack, version 1 or version 2 are much better than the flipper. But the flipper's really good for something you can throw in your pocket.
Correct.
And wander around with.
Yep.
And I can open people's garages with it and stuff like that.
Theoretically, yes. But also it depends on the RF frequency, which is limited on the flipper. Doesn't have the range that something like a HackRF has in terms of frequencies.
Okay.
What I like is if you're just getting into this stuff, a flipper's a nice thing to understand the fundamental concepts, right? And then go, oh, how do I get around these? How do I do better? How do I learn more? How do I get more advanced tools? And then you go like, oh, I'm going to go get a Proxmark. I'm going to get a HackRF, right? Going to get an Ubertooth 1 if I want to do some more Bluetooth stuff. I got to get an RTL SDR if I want to do, more RF stuff, which is a much probably RTL SDR first, Josh, as you work your way up to a HackRF, because an RTL SDR is a lot cheaper.
Well, unless you buy the what is it? Not the Kestrel, but what I forget what it is called now. Or unless you 6 RTL SDRs all in one clock sync.
Okay, unit. Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about or no?
I believe I may have heard Larry reference that. Although I bought and someone commented on this on our broadcast today, and they were absolutely right to make this comment. I said, I bought a HackRF, but I bought it from China for $150. Kraken
SDR.
The Kraken SDR, yep. So you can buy a HackRF from AliExpress for $150. Normally they're like $400. Go to our friend Garrett at Hacker Warehouse and order the proper hardware. It's going to operate better at higher frequencies, like 6 gigahertz to 6 to 7. Does it do up to 7, Josh, the HackRF? I think it'll do up to 7, right?
I think it does to 7. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember. I'd have to go.
The Chinese knockoffs, what they're saying is they kind of like they top out at 6.
They say they go to 7 or whatever it is.
But they're not.
They suck at that high.
But also, the person's comment before is like, hey, you're ordering random stuff from China. How do you know it's not backdoored? I'm like, well, I did my best to validate that it wasn't. I don't
hook it up to the internet.
It's also not connected to the internet. You do connect it USB to your computer, so there could be some trickery there. But you also want to. I reflashed mine, even though it had the latest firmware on it. I reflashed all the firmware on the one that I ordered from China. I also talked to my friends that do this stuff a lot more than I do, and I said, how do I make sure like this thing's cool? And they were like, well, go try this, make sure we flash firmware, make sure you do this, like show me the output from this command. They're like, no, like you're good, right? So you have to do some validation on that. But whoever commented before was absolutely right. I am very concerned about the stuff that we get as hackers, if you will, that have firmware, electronics, and Wi-Fi, RF, network connectivity that could be backdoored. And so you definitely want to validate that. And validate where you purchase it from too. There's a ton of sellers selling HackRFs on AliExpress. And what I did was I talked to one of my friends. I was like, who do I want to order? He's like, dude, like the link from this GitHub to AliExpress, that's your best shot, right? If you're interested, contact me offline. I'll send you the link to the one that I got if you want to roll the dice. And again, you also have to go, I'm rolling the dice. Like this could end badly. And I might have to put a claim in with AliExpress, for example, or I could be shit out of luck. So I rolled the dice. I don't recommend that for most. Like just go buy a proper one from Garrett at Hacker Warehouse would be my recommendation. Then you don't have to worry. Right? For whatever reason, I was like, I'll roll the dice. Where are we going next?
Oh goodness, that's a great question. Too many windows open.
We can talk about my number 3 really quickly.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's just something that absolutely drives me insane constantly and is not patching. And the story goes, lack of patching lets Russia and Chinese hackers exploit WinRAR flaw. This is a CVE that was patched. It was 2023-3883. And obviously known vulnerability in the file archiving tool, and it continues to be exploited. It was updated on August 2nd. And then people are just going on about, okay, then why don't WinRAR set up an auto update mechanism? But to me, that just comes with additional problems. Do you want something in the background just updating willy-nilly? It depends on whether you're production or not, I guess. But like Sandworm, Fancy Pair, and APT40 are apparently just lapping this up, and they're absolutely all over the place on it. But yeah, WinRAR also claiming to have a user base of over 500 million. It just makes me laugh because I wonder how many of them are actually paying for WinRAR.
None, or a couple. A couple of those people might be paying. I mean, you know.
Yeah, it's
I
when
paid
Chris
for
Rock
WinRAR.
said earlier. I was laughing earlier. We didn't
Josh
pick
is
up
like the
on it
only
too
one that's
well.
paid for WinRAR.
Are you
No,
paid
was
for
it
WinRAR, Josh?
No, I paid for WinRAR once. Yeah, I paid. I
You're a
felt
good
really
human.
bad.
You're a
And
good
I
human.
paid for it one time, and I actually, with my payment, I sent a note like, how many people actually pay for it? They sent something back and said, not many. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution, Josh.
You're the first this quarter. No, Chris Rock made me laugh earlier in the previous segment when he was like, one of my kids used my credit card to pay for Wikipedia or something.
Yeah.
I forgot to ask him, was he serious? Because that would be awesome.
The next
And they're
charge
like,
was WinRAR. That's what. Yeah.
Because they are good humans as well. We all use it and none of us pay for it.
No,
Sorry,
it even has that like
Wikipedia.
big donation thing, and we're like, oh, I gotta scroll past.
Yeah, and it's like if 1% of you paid for this, we could fund ourselves forever.
Right, and you're like, well, totally, someone else is gonna pay for that, right? But that's a thing in sociology where. What was the? I always forget what the experiment was in like Brooklyn or whatever. Like, is there a human sociology thing where everyone thinks someone else is gonna do something or solve the problem? Right? Wikipedia is the same thing. Everyone thinks someone else
Josh
is
is going to do it.
Yeah, Josh, you okay? You okay over there? What's going on?
I pay for Wikipedia.
You pay for Wikipedia too. You're just a nice human being.
Wikipedia.
Mandy, you pay for Wikipedia too? Wow, now I feel like an asshole.
Oh no, I feel bad now.
Aaron and I don't have to go. We have to go donate to Wikipedia after the show.
I donate like $4 a month. It's not that big a deal, you know.
I'm
But
going
yeah,
to
donate
to Wikipedia, and I will put proof on Slack sometime this week when I get round to it.
I'm not paying for WinRAR though. That's where I draw the line.
No,
okay,
no.
I'm totally cool with that. To pay for Wikipedia, put $2 a month, $5 a month towards Wikipedia. It's worth it. How often do you fucking use it?
Monthly. I'm not paying it monthly. I'll pay it once.
One-time donation.
Enough?
Aaron and I are only agreeing to one-time donation. Okay. And Aaron doesn't have a job right now, so I'm spotting him the $20 to donate to Wikipedia. Okay, I'm making a donation for both of us.
I've been paying for Wikipedia for years. I don't even remember when it started.
You're just a good human being, Josh.
Come on, it's like I think I give him $4 a month. What's the big friggin' deal?
I really, Wikipedia. It's like I have stole their breath.
I comment. I talk about open source software. I have to do something to support it.
Did you also pay for like Red Hat back in the day? Did you give them the money for the CD?
No, fuck no. CentOS or CentOS. I'm sorry, that's what I did.
Okay.
But like no, I mean, but CentOS, I would send bug reports. I paid for it that way. I actually contributed as best I could.
I feel like I've settled on Manjaro. I feel like I should give them a donation.
So do it.
I should. Although my other laptop now, it's just for hacking stuff, and I put Kali Linux on the laptop, and I only use it just for like GQRX and Kismet.
I just ordered the literally while we were talking, I ordered the keyboard, mouse, and screen for my daughter for her Raspberry Pi. And so I'm really excited.
Which screen and what did you get?
I got like a 27-inch monitor, just a $150.
Oh, and did you get the Raspberry Pi that has the keyboard with it's all built in?
Yeah, the 400. But
what is that?
I the keyboard and mouse. I wanted this mouse, but it only comes in a keyboard mouse set. So I'm like, fine, I'll use the keyboard for something else, or I won't. I don't really care. But she's gonna have her own. I've had the 400 sitting on a shelf for like almost a year, but she's now old enough and ready for it to be usable. So now I will. Now it's time for her to teach her Linux. I'm very excited.
I'm excited about the Raspberry Pi 5, by the way. I mean, more expensive, but I don't recall the exact specs off the top of my head, but I read one or two articles on it, Josh, and both outlets were reporting basically like a double performance.
Jesus.
Doubling performance in the Pi 5. So for mostly what a lot of us use Raspberry Pis for, it's not a big deal. Like I get a bunch of Pi 3s floating around and I'm like, whatever, like they work fine for what I'm using them for, right? But for a desktop, like what you're talking about, Josh, the 5 might be a significant upgrade. If you're using it as a actual desktop, that's when you need the extra speed. Just for like, I use it for like sniffing packets. I got like one with a screen that I kept a screen on it for like running Wi-Fi attacks and stuff. Like you don't need a lot for that.
Is that the friggin' specs on this thing? It's got an 8 gig dual band AC Wi-Fi.
Yeah, dude, the 5 is ridiculous.
Oh my God. I had thousands of dollars worth of laptops that weren't as powerful as this. Many thousands of dollars of laptops.
Correct. Yeah,
I have laptops now that are not as powerful as this.
What I'm hoping too is it drives down the cost of the previous revisions. I don't know, I might be, utopian world I'm living in, but yeah, the Pi 5 is pretty amazing.
Holy shit. That's amazing, dude.
Like double the speed of the Pi 4. I don't even think I had a Pi 4 somewhere and I can't find it. And every time I find a Pi, I look and it's a Pi 3. Because I must have bought at least a dozen Pi 3s for various things back in the day. This is before all the supply chain issues where they were hard to find. Although that's better now. You can find Pis.
And apparently there's an orange Pi 5B that's even better.
Probably double the cost, but
yeah.
Or
at this point,
orange Pis are kind of expensive though.
They've got a 16 gig orange Pi though. 8 core 64-bit processor.
You need Pis. So I'm going to be giving this webinar coming up, right? Like one of the things you need some Raspberry Pis, right? Just for various things. Like you should build your own like Ducky script, injectable keyboard stroke kind of thing. You should have a Pi Pico or whatever for that. You should have a Pi Zero for various things. And those are cheap enough where you're building it out. Like you should have a set of Raspberry Pi things to do stuff with because they come in handy. That's what I've observed, right? Various projects.
Unbelievable. Okay. Yeah, Raspberry Pis are great. I cannot believe how strong they are. Jesus. I have current laptops not as strong as these freaking things.
You need to update your laptops, though.
Well, I mean, there are laptops that I use for specific purposes, like the laptop that I use for the ID printer. That's literally that laptop only gets pulled out when I yank the ID printer out of its box. That thing is very old. So I have 3 layers of backups on my laptops, and my third backup layer is less powerful than a Pi 5 now. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because you're like me. You never like throw out a laptop.
That's not true. I have like 5 laptops in the e-waste bust up.
Well,
right
I mean,
now.
I guess eventually, right? But there's a cycle.
There's a cycle,
right?
That's exactly it.
Like 3 generations, right? After the third generation, they get old enough that you're like, it's time to get rid of that
That's
one.
enough.
Yeah.
Besides, any data I might have on there, I don't care about anymore. It's like my retention. You know how you have retention periods in the corporate world,
right?
I have a 3-generation laptop retention period.
Yeah, after 3 generations, I've changed all those passwords and whatever. Right? That data's useless. I still, when it goes to e-waste, I still take the hard drive out and drill holes in it or whatever.
Oh yeah. I wipe them, I deban them, and then I give them to local kids or wherever.
Right.
I lived in Wilmington,
Delaware, or I guess if you're Chris Rock, you put them in the vehicle that you're exploding with the IED. That's like you're 2 for 1. If you're doing that experiment, you're going to blow something up. I'm like, hold on. I got a bunch of e-waste on here that has my data on it. I'm just going to put it in there. Like, let's just melt it at, a couple thousand degrees Fahrenheit. It's great. It's great.
Well, it's really funny. Like, I didn't want to say anything, but like Vlad, who we interviewed on the show, and I did a camera in a grenade. And we certainly didn't spend $100,000 on it, right? But we also didn't have a 1,000 frame a second camera to do anything with either. So
this is true.
Big difference.
Larry and I have also used thermite to melt through old equipment as well.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember when we used to do those like computer destructions?
Shmookan had the contest. Who can melt a drive in a rack without anything except maybe a little smoke? And I remember the winner had 2 layers of wallboard, just like regular gypsum wallboard, and a double height hard drive thing. So the thermite was on top, the hard drive was below in this drywall container, and it melted the hard drive into a friggin' puddle. Didn't go anywhere else, and just had a little smokestack that the smoke came out of, and that was it.
So they insulated it with wallboard.
2 layers of wallboard. Wallboard is fire rock.
Oh, right.
Wallboard is
it's basically like rock.
Fire.
It's basically like rocks. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
And so I put my hard drive in there, and then I melt the whole thing with thermite. The whole hard drive with thermite.
They had a thin layer of thermite, and not thin, like they had a layer of thermite over the whole thing. And when that thing lit up with a some sort of electric heating mechanism that lit the magnesium ribbon, and it just lit the thermite, and it melted right through the hard drive. Nice little holes all over the place.
That's amazing. What's the one? Dude, what's the one where you shoot with firearms?
That's tannerite. Tannerite is a binary explosive that if you hit it with high enough velocity, it
explodes. That's more fun than thermite. Thermite's like melting. Tannerite is like exploding. I like exploding.
Exploding is fun. I actually just saw a YouTube short of a guy filling a refrigerator with 2 pounds of tannerite, which, by the way, is a lot of tannerite.
Also, you could be violating some laws with that much explosives.
Could be.
Okay, you are.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So he shoots the tannerite, and the refrigerator. He's probably 70, 100 yards away.
Yeah,
whatever.
You would want to be 70 or 100 yards away. At least.
No, you want to be more than that because he was behind a tree. He shot it, and the door came past him.
Oh my god.
It was definitely awesome. All right.
What do you say we need to wrap?
Sounds like a plan.
What do you think?
Sounds like a plan, sir.
Okay, let's wrap. Hey, thank you everyone. Thanks everyone for listening and watching this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. That'll do it for this week. We'll see you next time. Over and out.